we never saw a higher demand for parking, for instance, because everyone wants to come by car because it's safe, it's mine, it's a private
Yeah,
space, all these
true.
kind
So
of
you
things.
would recommend to independent hotels in Switzerland to now do revenue management on their parking?
And on the
There's
rooms.
there's a statement from the podcast.
Welcome everybody to a new episode of the Smart Hospitality Podcast. Today we had Wilhelm Weber, aka Wilko, Head of Revenue and Digital Strategy from Kempinski Hotels as our guest. We spoke about the importance of keeping your price stable during a crisis, how he thinks the luxury will benefit compared to the budget sector, and who has the best dress code during the Kempinski team video calls. Enjoy the show.
Wilko, thank you for being on the show again. We decided we were going to spill the beans and confess that we had you on the show before, and the sound quality wasn't up to everyone's standards. So thank you for coming on the show again. I'm going to start with a very basic topic current question. Tell me a little bit how. When you started working for Kempinski not too long ago, up until now, in the past, let's say 4, 6, or 8 weeks, how's the work environment changed? Because I imagine you guys have also adapted in the head office to home office and so on and so forth. So give me a little bit of an insight how, without traveling and with working from home, things have been shaping up.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me again. And I'm actually quite happy that we do it again because I sound much smarter if I say anything about the current situation than a couple of months back. I openly admit I've never been as wrong with my forecast than in the beginning of March. So, so looking backward is much more pleasant to analyze the situation. So yes, of course, like everyone else, COVID has had quite an impact on our company as well. And not talking about the business, but also talking about the environment. So basically, while Kempinski as a traditional hotel company was mainly working out of offices, a lot of physical meetings, a lot of great travel, it has taken us about 2 weeks to change that into an environment like home office. And my common joke is always, if you looked into the conference calls at the beginning of home office, we still looked like a luxury company. 4 weeks later, we looked like a true startup. So the dress code, the shaving conduct, and all these kind of things has changed drastically. And now it's kind of cool because we still got a lot of people working from home. We still got a completely decentralized team. Some countries being back in the office, some countries still being in lockdown. But we found a kind of a, let's say, luxury interpretation of it. So yes, we do have a lot of conference calls, but yes, we also have something like a dress code again. It's not as formal as before, but it's there.
So Wilko, let me stop you right there. Who has the best dress code on Kempinski video calls?
Well, definitely my boss. I have to admit that I'm reporting to our chief commercial officer, Amanda Elder, and she has kept up the luxury spirit in all of the things.
There we go. Well done, Amanda. Go you.
She knows perfectly well.
Are you going to tell us who has the worst dress code as well, or should we not go there?
Well, since I'm German, I fear that some colleagues would say I. Okay. But I've just got a lot of blue shirts, which I wear in the office and at home, so there's no big difference. No, I totally. I think the best beard growing skills was our marketing boss, Stefan Dupre. And the bad thing was, we met in the office on a Wednesday before the lockdown, and he was without a beard. He was then in home office, and we could supervise and watch his beard grow. So he looked a little bit like Santa's little brother.
Yeah.
And then we met again in the office 2 weeks back, and he was shaved again and had no beard, and I didn't recognize it. It took me until lunch break, and he was like, "Didn't you kind of see any change?" And I want to be polite. So I said, "Oh, did you work out? Did you lose some kilos?" And he said, "No, I shaved again. The beard is gone." And I said, "Oh shit, I didn't realize that." So no, but it was quite fun. And there was one thing that I really liked about it. I mean, there was a lot of bad things, of course, But there was one very interesting thing. So before we were the head office in Geneva and a lot of regional office like Dubai and Beijing and so on. But all of a sudden we were all in home office. So it didn't matter so much where on the planet you were in the home office. So there was a bit of a loss of a distance feeling. And we moved closer and we started to really collaborate as one global team. And that feels really good. And I hope we are coming out of the situation now step by step. I hope that we're going to kind of keep this spirit of it doesn't matter where you are or who you are. We're all kind of equal on these calls and in these teamwork. And that's cool.
Wilko, so you just mentioned it already that you've been working from home now during the crisis. So you went back to Lucerne. I'm sure that in your career as a consultant before and now in the first couple of months at Kempinski, you've never been this long at home with your family. How was that?
That is true. I have to say I totally enjoyed it because I'm here in the morning when the kids wake up to have breakfast with them, and I'm there in the evening to have dinner again with them. I mean, that never happened for the past 10 years. Very right. I liked it, and I think the family learned to like it as well. So the kids thought it's really cool.
What does the wife think, though, Wilko?
My wife had to get used to it, to be honest. Being away, I also totally respected that I wasn't involved too much into decision making at home. So now being back home, of course, being a consultant, I had a lot of ideas on how to improve
optimize things. Yeah. I'm sure the wife appreciates it a lot, Wilko.
Now she's happy that you're back in Geneva.
Well, now she's working in Zurich, actually. I'm at the moment in Lucerne. But the good thing is I think we found, after splitting up twice, we found a level of mutual respect again. So I do not make PowerPoint presentations about how to fill the dishwasher. And at the same time, she respects it when the home office door, so I've got a proper office, thank God. When it's closed, it's also not a time to kind of run into it and to address me with some kind of, I don't know, can you please get this from the grocery shopping or something like that. So no, we found back to that, but we had to get used like many couples. And probabilities, since I'm a revenue manager, I think it's beyond 90% that we're going to stay together after it. So crossing fingers, if she doesn't listen to the podcast, I think I've got a fair chance.
Okay, that's good. Don't worry about that. I don't think that she will be listening. But you said already before that you guys actually moved even closer together at Kempinski on a global scale. Can you walk us a bit through that process? I mean, I remember meeting you beginning of March when ITB was canceled in Berlin, and it was exactly in that transition phase between state of normality to the new reality. What was the mechanism which was put in place, and how did you guys get it in order that you can have
I think like
such global team now shift?
We had a sorry, you were interrupted.
No, it was.
I think like most global companies, it's we moved from the office into home offices. So we had a couple of colleagues like my team who used to work while traveling. So we were well equipped. We had laptops and cams, and we're also quite familiar with the video conferencing tools. But we had other colleagues that worked from home for the first time ever. So we had a queue in front of the IT office, kind of handing out laptops. We had another queue in front of the second IT office, getting instructions on VPN dial-up connections and other things. And then when everybody was home, the people who were working from home for the first time wanted to really prove to everyone that they are honestly working. So they send out, I think, 1 email per hour times number of colleagues times copied in. So you got flooded with a series of conference call requests and emails, and it was terribly busy. And then after, I think, 1 to 2 weeks, we found a sort of a rhythm. We grooved into that new home office environment, and it was really good. So we had a couple of calls from the leadership. We had a couple of calls with the own teams. And I have to say, big compliment to my boss, Amanda Elder. She did a great job of kind of grooving us in and keeping us connected with a monthly global call where we have about 300 people following, but also with 2 weekly calls for the team where we can exchange amongst us and align on projects. And that was cool. What was interesting was that there were, let's say, certain job roles that got really busy, like the revenue team. And there were certain job roles that got a little bit less busy, like, for instance, corporate events, because these events were canceled. And the cool thing was there is a super team spirit of those colleagues who had a little bit of more time, kind of took over and supported projects in other fields. So we had a bit of cross-departmental collaboration. And with that together, even now that we are, for the Swiss team at least, on short time measures, we're getting the job done in a good way, and the new colleagues coming from outside bring a new perspective to things. And I think it has also helped to increase the level of respect for each other's work, because you all of a sudden take over someone else's role and you find out actually how difficult or how complex certain things are. So that's cool.
That's incredible to hear, because often you hear from other hotel chains or something that this, water cooler conversations or these cross-departmental conversations are not happening anymore. But actually, you guys are now collaborating even more together. That's impressive to hear. Looking at your role at Kempinski, being in charge of revenue strategy, digital strategy. I'll get back to that a bit later, but looking at revenue strategy, how did you, strategize the revenue strategy from Kempinski in a time of crisis, an unprecedented crisis? And how would you compare now COVID-19 and this global situation maybe to previous crises?
Yeah. Well, I answered the second question first. You cannot compare the current situation to previous situations. And it's not about the situation of a pandemic or some kind of event that was hitting the industry. The part which was unforeseen, and where I think it is a black swan event, despite some colleagues' opinion, is the fact that nobody of us had seen that governments would really shut down public life in that way. A travel warning at the moment still for 160 countries for German travelers in the main holiday season. The lack of flights and actually really the measure of stay at home and being in a lockdown situation is something that we all had never seen before. And therefore the situation was new to all of us. And in the beginning, we thought a little bit that we could benefit from the experience we had with the China portfolio. However, the situation is so different market by market that we couldn't just take what our Chinese colleagues did and roll that over to Europe or to Middle East. So we really had to be agile and to learn rapidly. Now, what did we do from revenue point of view? Well, the first thing is, and there was the fair question, how can you revenue manage if there is no demand? Because demand is the driver for so many things. And that's a valid question. But there is a lot of things actually that you have to do these days as a revenue director or as a regional manager. And the first thing is we went to everyone and we said, okay, stop to forecast like you used to forecast, simply because the model is failing. We can see this in many of the revenue management systems, which are as wrong as never before in their assumptions. Like all the kind of models where we use past data, past pickup, and so on are not working. So we changed the whole appearance very rapidly from being efficient through better planning into being efficient through acting faster. So we went from proactive to reactive. What does it mean? We identified 5 main drivers that are actually impacting our business, such as government regulations or airline capacities, for instance. And we said we're going to monitor those. And when they change, then we are acting and adapting to the new situation as fast as we can. So we gain a competitive advantage, not because our forecast is better, but because our reaction is faster. And I think if you follow the press of the past months, Kempinski has proven to be one of the fast-moving luxury hotel companies. I don't know whether there is a measure for whether we are the number 1 or the number 2 in being agile and fast, but at least we are amongst those luxury hotel companies that are always the first one to address new topics. For instance, health and safety. for instance, increased flexibility with cancellation policies, etc. The second thing, after we were in lockdown, it's we had to establish, let's say, this new mode of kind of looking forward, and of course, the profit game was played on the cost measure side and not on the revenue side, because simply there were no revenues in most of the cases. And just recently now, moving out of the lockdown into the new normal, whatever that's going to be, in the first discussions, everyone was discussing, is it a V shape, is it a U shape? Now, we at Kempinski firmly believe, like many economists, that it's something like a Nike swoosh, like the Nike logo. So steep in and slow out. And we went in very fast, so from 100 to 0 in almost no time, let's say 2 weeks. But we also think that from 0 to 100%, this will take much, much longer and will come in phases. So
is that good? Is that good or bad, Wilko, in your opinion? Because I imagine there's some people who will argue that's good because it will allow people to adapt to the model. It will allow people to adapt to the new normal, if we want to call it that. And I'm sure there's some people who would argue a U shape would have been much better because it would have been steep down and steep up.
Well, as an economist, I have to say a V shape or U shape would have been better for the economy. Full stop.
Yeah.
There's no way how a slow recovery can be better in terms of GDP, revenues, occupancy ratios, whatever. So, but this is, well, beyond our control. So
yeah, of course, you're right.
We just have to live with it. But it was interesting because many colleagues also on conferences, on podcasts, on panels were discussing, okay, we're now, when it's opening up, we're going to put all of the marketing money that we stopped spending. We're going to put all of this now into international markets to give it a push. And I was like, hey, hang on. I don't see the reason for doing a campaign in the US for Chinese properties if the US is not flying into China. So we shaped a 4-phase model approach, which we call Kempinski Road to Recovery. And I'm a little bit proud we were the first company using Road to Recovery. And ultimately, my team came up with it. So Road to Recovery, and we phased it and we said, okay, now phase number 1 is completely focused on the domestic market, for instance. Phase number 2 is corporate travel picking up slowly by industry sector. Phase number 4 and so on and so forth. And then also there's a different speed of recovery for MICE and events than it is for individual travel. And with this 4-phased approach, we don't know how fast you go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, but we know exactly that it's good. You focus on the phase you're in and you focus on the next step. You don't have to plan the new normal with international markets back when you just open up from lockdown into a domestic market can start to travel again. And that has been tremendously helpful and is continuously helpful because not only do we have a common language to understand which property is in which status, but also we have a common alignment on how we plan and also address things like the 2021 business plan, which is coming up now.
Is in your opinion, Wilko, what of the travel scenarios that you've just outlined is gonna recover first? Is it naturally going to be individual travel because it seems the most easy to recover? And so what about, so if we establish that, what about the others? What about business travel? Do you even see a comeback for business travel the way it was pre-COVID-19? Do you even see a comeback for MICE?
Well, number 1, yes, I see a comeback for all of the sectors. The question is the timing.
Okay.
And the reason for that is if you look into how resilient our industry is, I mean, we bounced back despite 9/11. We bounced back despite bombing attacks, despite wars. Travel is coming back because we live in a globalized kind of community on this planet. The question is the speed and the intensity of how it's going to come back. So is it going to be exactly like it used to be? Probably not. But it's definitely coming back and there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I think transient will come back before group and MICE because the regulations are limiting the amount of people. And this is putting a delay on big events and this is putting a delay on the MICE segment.
And do you reckon that, because I've read one or two things about this especially this whole mice topic, because we can all agree that there's some hotels which live off mice, and of the event sector, and there's a little bit more connected.
Mice at the moment.
Say again?
And which die at the moment because there is no mice.
Exactly. So is there a realistic chance that, especially in that segment, we're really going to see some properties struggling, potentially shutting down with a strong dependence on mice, because there simply will be no mice ultimately until we have a vaccine, probably?
Well, whether they are shutting down or not, I think is a question on how strong their reserves are. What's the ownership situation? How much are they willing to bite the bullet?
Right.
So if I'd be the new owner of a highly leveraged, mortgage-driven, probably leased Congress hotel, and my property owner would not allow me to cut on the lease, probably I would go belly up, and it's not my fault.
Yeah.
If I would have inherited a hotel with a conference center, or if I'm in a diversified investment and one of the things I own next to the shopping centers, the apartments, the office buildings, and the hotels is a congress center, I probably survive it. So I think there's light and shadow, and ultimately, even if the players will change, mice as an industry phenomenon will come back. But the other thing is, we also see that that the amount of mice and meetings and things we had, which we used to do like we always used to do, has been challenged by the situation. That's an interesting point, because I don't think that all the meetings will only happen online. And also, I don't think that all the physical meetings will come back. So even the heavy travelers in our company, and I count myself into that group, we are questioning whether it's really necessary to travel as much as we used to do. And since everyone is asking themselves the same question at the same time, there is a chance of slowing down in that sense a little bit. So
do you still have the same amount of meetings at the moment, Wilko? Just out of curiosity, do you, like, whether they're online or not set aside, but do you still have the same amount of meetings, or have you actually internally in your team, maybe with your superior as well, have you decided, well, actually, do we really need all of those? I'm not so sure.
Well, that's an interesting question. So phase one, we had more meetings than before because everyone was home alone. And in our business sector, in our company, and especially in my team, we then questioned how we want to kind of do this with the amount of meetings, because it became, you were in meetings and conference call back to back, but same time your inbox was filling up and you didn't really manage your projects. So you didn't get more things done because you were in more meetings. So we looked at productivity as a measure, and then we questioned the meeting. And we haven't necessarily cut back on the amount of meetings, but we are now introducing a completely new efficiency in how we do meetings. Let me give you one example. Like everyone who is responsible for the business through third parties like OTAs and wholesalers has regular meetings with them. And if you make a lot of business with them, you have, let's say, a monthly meeting. So far, these monthly meetings have been all over the place, and it was ad hoc, like, oh yeah, we could offer you this. And there were like 5 emails per meeting until you got the time slot fixed. So we went into the very old school idea of a jour fixe and addressed, for instance, all the OTA partners. And we said, okay, second Tuesday of the month, afternoon, only meetings with OTAs, no other meetings, but we see all the big OTAs back to back in 45-minute slots. The first 15 minutes are standardized across all meetings. Same charts, same information, and looking further towards the end of the year, it will be the same layout. And like this, it's much more efficient because you kind of go into the topic and then you have like 5 meetings in a row. And then you tick it off and then you kind of go to the next topic and you have 5 meetings in a row. This is much more efficient than having an OTA meeting on Monday, then next week Tuesday, and you can compare better, you can relate better, and you can execute better afterwards. If there's something urgent, of course, you can still do ad hoc. But with this jour fixe idea, we are coming into kind of a rhythm where everyone knows this meeting is happening then, and that's the kind of rhythm, and that will help us a lot to increase efficiency. And this is, to be honest, is the only. I mean, we're on short time at the moment, but we still
Yeah.
need to get the job done. So if you have less time for the same job, you can only increase efficiency. Otherwise, you're screwed.
Definitely. But looking now a bit on something which is maybe not so optimized and standardized is the health and safety regulations that, by the different governments. Let's say Germany, Austria, Switzerland, as an example, especially also in the other European countries. In Switzerland, they've started opening up weddings and other larger convention rules. In Germany, we're a bit more, let's say, conservative and a bit more on the safety side. How do you guys manage that on a scale? And what's your personal opinion? Should countries open up faster and be able to allow bigger events quicker, or do you think we should be a bit more step by step and making sure that everybody stays safe?
Well, since I'm not an expert on pandemic situations, I'm very happy that someone else takes a decision on how fast the country has to open up and takes the responsibility for that. I wouldn't feel comfortable kind of giving any kind of advice on it because it's absolutely not my background. The personal sentiment I have, also doing the first travels between Germany and Switzerland now again, is that the speed of how some people mentally feel that we're getting out of the lockdown is personally scaring me sometimes. So some people, if you talk to some people, especially to these Aluminiumhüte, as you call them in Germany, you got the feeling that actually there was no Corona, or Corona was an event which happened and now it's over and it's back to normal. And that's definitely not the case. So the speed of forgetting about why we did it and is a bit scary to me as a person. But
And
how fast or how slow countries should open up, I cannot comment on, because that's
how do you think
ours to do.
And how do you think this will impact the guests? You said that people are quickly forgetting about did Corona ever exist, in a sense, but on the other side, a lot of hotels say now we have to push more and more on our hygiene standards, and that's the number one thing guests will look for when they book hotels in the future. How do you think the booking patterns or what guests will be looking for in hotels will change after this lockdown phase?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, we definitely see a change, and I mean, I've got the fortune of being in a luxury hotel company with very high standards. That is based in Switzerland with its head office, a country which has about the highest standards in hygiene anyway. So we introduced in Kempinski a couple of weeks back Kempinski white glove services. And white glove services is our answer to, yes, we have new health and safety regulations, but also we are a luxury hotel company and we don't want the guests to miss out the luxury experience when they do it. So we came back to white gloves, for instance, which was a tool which was used in the luxury hotel sector for many decades. And it was the standard 100 years ago that people working in the guest-facing departments were wearing white gloves to show that everything is clean. So we reintroduced a little bit of our luxury heritage and combined that with absolutely state-of-the-art standards on how to disinfect, how to make rooms, how to secure privacy, and how to keep the health and safety standards, not only for the guests, but also for our employees. And this has been rolled out globally. And if you look into the video coverage a couple of months back from China opening up, and now from, for instance, Abu Dhabi demonstrating these new services, we can see that we actually do the same thing, but it looks much more elegant now. So we're learning how to incorporate it in our DNA. And yes, guest behavior is changing drastically. So I'm looking at the website statistics, for instance. And while we had a peak on cancellation policies and COVID travel advice at the beginning of it, we are now seeing the highest number of clicks on the new health and safety standards and on Kempinski white glove services. And a little side note, if we look at, for instance, in the Austria, Germany, Switzerland, where we see a absolutely great summer ahead. So leisure properties in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland will see a super summer season because the people who travel the most, who have a lot of buying power, are forced to travel only within the country. And we never saw a higher demand for parking, for instance, because everyone wants to come by car because it's safe, it's mine, it's a private space, all these kind
So
of
you would recommend to independent hotels in Switzerland to now do revenue management on their parking?
and on the rooms.
There's a statement from the podcast.
And on the rooms, increase the parking lot and increase the room rate. I mean, honestly, if I would personally, which I don't, but if I would own a good leisure property in Switzerland or Austria or Germany, I would not kind of go down with the rates. I would look at what's happening at the moment at the pickup, and I would not over the top, but I would slightly increase the rate for that demand, which is for sure to come.
Let me ask you on that, Wilko, because it's very interesting you say that, because we had a gentleman on the podcast not too long ago who is the head of revenue at Soho House, and he said pretty much the exact same thing as you just said. So help me understand the hoteliers, Wilko, that at the moment are slashing their rates by 20, 30, 40%. Because I'm sure we can all agree that, especially in some of the more competitive destinations, there's a variety of hotels that are doing that. They're making insane deals with the OTAs of Booking and Expedia just to get in any revenue at any cost. Can you explain to everybody in simple terms why that cannot be the right play?
Well, I'm happy to quote myself from another podcast where I said, if you have a cash flow.
Are you saying there's other podcasts than Smack?
Oh yeah. Well,
what?
No, I think sorry. Something.
It must have been a TV show or something, right?
I might have dropped it somewhere else, but
there we go. Okay.
Found a way to argue it, I think. But the thing is, like, if I have a cash flow problem, responding to that with price dumping is if I'm trying to extinguish a fire with by using fuel. I mean, it's a mistake. In all words, it's a mistake. Dropping rates right now is irresponsible, and I can understand that some of the markets are desperate and are competitive, but this year is really, really bad anyway. But if we start to now decrease this drastically without reasoning, it's just destroying 2021 and beyond. And I cannot see why anyone would like to do this. Now, that being said, we are in some markets that are behaving competitive. You cannot be the only smart person in a room full of idiots. Then you're dying as well. But this price slashing and so on, which I see mainly happening in the cities, because we got a lot of supply which is just not picked up.
Yeah.
I also see it mainly happening in like really, let's say, mediocre hotels. So if you're a Me Too product and the only reason why you had good numbers is because there was more demand than supply, or there was sufficient demand, and there you have no USP, you just offer a place to sleep and there's nothing special about your hotel, then of course you are in trouble now. You are in big trouble. But slashing your rates has never been a good answer. So all the colleagues who are doing this right now out of desperacy, I don't want to be arrogant and say like it's stupid or it's mindless.
No, yeah, of course.
I totally cannot relate to the rationale behind it, and I cannot explain it because I don't understand why they're doing it.
But is there anything which the market can do to stop these kind of mechanisms? Or is the only thing you can do is kind of just repeat and repeat saying, hey, price slashing is not the solution?
Well, I think my influence is really very limited. So I can only repeat that. And I also think that the market has a regulation mechanism. People who act wrong will go out of business over time. And the only thing we can hope is that they go out of business fast, so they don't destroy the good ones. From our point of view, in many of the markets, we have the number one or the number two, but we're often the market leader. So it's not only about our cash flow, it's also about the responsibility for the destination that we have. And we take this very seriously. So Kempinski, we are holding the rate. And if we're forced into measures, rest assured, they're short, they're fenced, and this is not the standard, and they're carefully discussed before they're being executed. But you will not see price slashing in our brand across the board.
And I know that you're not allowed to compare the different crises, as you said, but how's the market performing this time in comparison to previous crises, really just on the price dumping subject? Are people learning from the 2008 recession, etc., and the rates are staying much more stable than before?
The rates are definitely more stable than before. That's the positive thing. I'm seeing this from benchmark numbers. However, I don't know whether the people are learning or whether some key players are learning. But in the luxury segment, I see much more price discipline in mature markets. Let's put it that way.
Where I'm trying to think of a way to ask this question in a politically correct manner, although we're not exactly famous for being politically correct on Smack. But where do the OTAs stand in all of this, Wilko? I mean, you deal with them, and I mean deal in the most respectful of ways, obviously. But I'm sure you've been in touch and in talks with them. I've heard the vast majority from they're being absolutely terrible to the hotels because they've put measures in place that make it even more difficult for hotels, to statements saying that, well, at this point in time, they're the only ones who are going to be able to save us because they're going to be the first ones to bring us back some a form of demand. Can you, without stepping on anyone's toes, because that would obviously not be like us at all on Smack, but can you tell me what your opinion is on whether everyone has behaved the way they could and should have during the times that we've been through the past 8 weeks?
Well, there is a lot of things going on, and what I am personally surprised or not surprised anymore is the intensity of the discussion in the media.
Yeah.
And what the same players are actually doing seems disconnected in some cases. Let's put it that way.
Do explain.
Some people have their mouth wide open, but if you see them in a negotiation, they don't do anything. So I rather focus on my discussions with the OTAs in those meetings with the OTAs, who
Right.
are very important partners.
Yeah.
However, I think this situation more than ever shows extremely that we're all sitting in the same boat. So the OTAs without the hotels are worth nothing, and hotels without OTAs lose about 20 to 40% in occupancy, depending on whether you're Prague or whether you are New York. But the whole thing is, we are in the same boat, and it's not a good advice to use a crisis to start kind of bashing each other. It's better to find solutions. However, we have to say that some people tend to be very creative in what they think they're doing.
Mm.
And so from time to time, you have to kind of also draw a red line and say, like, okay, this is not happening here,
Yeah.
and this is not good, and kind of cut them back. But with the big OTAs, we have a good discussion.
Yeah.
We have a good exchange. With some of the new players, it's a bit tricky.
Mm-hmm.
With some of the intermediaries, those guys who pass on net rates and so on.
Right. Yeah.
We have a bit of, let's say, tricky situations, but nothing which cannot be solved.
Okay, so let me try and get another opinion out of you on roughly the same topic. How is that whole OTA scenario going to evolve? Set aside who's done right and who's done wrong. Are we still gonna be using OTAs the same way we have before? Is there maybe an argument where the leisure travel will be a little bit more geared towards direct booking in the future than because people are more interested in hygiene policies and want to inform themselves about that? Or do you reckon the balance is going to stay roughly the same across all different sectors of tourism?
Okay. The silver lining, I think, is the best information about hygiene and safety standards for that property is on the property website if it's managed properly.
Right.
So there's a chance for direct bookings if you do it right. There's no differentiation that you say your room is cleaner if you book direct, or you get a free hand
You get
sanitizer.
a free wipe through the desk. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But the OTAs are learning this now, and they're now reacting. So we see many requests where they're asking us to provide the information about health and safety. And we had a big discussion internally about whether we want to provide this information to third parties or whether we should use it to emphasize our website.
And
We took a decision, and I also voted for that strongly, to share that information with all partners.
okay.
Because this is just something which is an essential need of the guest, and it would be unfair not to display it wherever we can.
Mhm.
However, how much the OTA allows us to tell is a different story. So if they only have 10 questions about hygiene and safety, then we only answer those 10, and you find much, much more on the health and safety and on our Kempinski.com.
Yeah.
That is for sure there. Now, who's winning? I would say in markets where the demand is low, it will. My guess is that it will be like before: oversupply, low demand. OTAs are winning.
Okay.
Just because we as suppliers act competitive and stupid. In markets where we see an increased demand and a shortage of supply, let's say leisure properties in the DACH region this summer, I think direct bookings will win because we will limit the inventory, or not we, Kempinski, but there will be limited inventory on the
Hotels.
OTAs if you want
Yeah.
to do the booking. But you might find a room if you call the hotel, even old school by telephone, and they just move another booking, and then you can book the entire week without a room change with what the system might not be able to show. So high demand, there is a chance that direct can win. Low demand, there is no chance for direct to gain any advantage.
Yeah. Wilko, we can't, be moving towards the end of the podcast without having talked about the broader sense of the e-commerce rather than just the revenue, which you've been kind enough to share some insights with us. How's the e-commerce been? I mean, if we look at, websites and the social medias of the world and what you have, basically all it's been is we're doing this to keep you safe and we're doing that to keep you safe. Is that something we're going to have to get used to, in your opinion, that hotel companies, hotels are going to spend the next couple of months telling the guests that they're safe at their property and what measures they've put in place? And my question connected to that is that really online marketing, or does that have a place in online marketing going forward, in your opinion?
Yeah. So first of all, I think e-commerce is one of the most impacted fields we had.
Yeah.
Because for the first time ever, everyone was cutting back the spends on AdWords and everything.
Yeah.
So all the online marketing displays, which you can move fast, which is the good thing, were really kind of suspended and cut back to minimum. Now, with it picking up again, the good thing about e-commerce is you can see what the guests are interested in. So I can see the attention I have on a beach photo versus a person with a mask cleaning the floor photo. And if I see more interest of the guests and better conversion on hygiene pictures, I post them, and we do so as well. So I think for the short time, yes, we will see a lot of come to us, it's safe, a lot of cleaning ladies, a lot of masks, a lot of disinfection. We will hardly see smiling faces because they're covered. So that's definitely there. But I think it will also swing back as soon as more markets are opening up again. But at the moment, this is paramount. This is the number one thing that everyone wants to know. So yes, of course, and we also pitch on AdWords that are connected. Not going to details about how we do it or which words, but there are some hidden gems that Booking.com did not put their
If you
market.
want more details on that, be sure to email askvilko@kempinski.com. Yeah,
Or go to customer care.
there we go. Yeah,
Go to support@google.com. That's
there
it.
we go. Yeah.
But so that will happen. But the nice thing about e-commerce, which I think will happen, I mean, social media is big, and it's even bigger after the crisis. So I think we see a lot of shift to social media channels simply because all the people who have so much time have all mobile phones, and they're kind of swiping and looking and scrolling like crazy. And that has never been bigger before.
How are your TikTok skills?
None.
Oh.
Zero. I got a good younger team on it. I'm very, very happy to say that we got a couple of super young talents in the company. And from time to time, we have a face-to-face meetings because I need translation.
Okay.
But is your social media presence mainly for inspiration or also for communication with the guests?
All three. Inspiration, communication, and transaction.
Okay.
So for instance, room service and takeaway ordering, voucher sales, we've increased the activities behind that a lot. It's never been huge in the total revenue mix, but now since some of the big revenues are not happening or were not happening for the past weeks, all of a sudden you start focusing on these auxiliary things, and we've seen great results, for instance, on voucher shops. I mean, that's fantastic. That's cool.
Have you implemented new tools to capture this ancillary revenue or this moving or a shift of
Yes.
demand?
Yeah. And most of that, or to summarize in 2 words or 3 words, where were the new investments? Mobile, social, on-premise.
And can you give us an example or two on the on-premise ones? What? Not necessarily in great detail of how you did it, but what were some of the things that you saw where you saw some vacancies and where you moved forward?
Well, basically, without spoiler alerting, because there's more to come, but many guests, when they come on site, they're not so fond of touching pens and shaking hands and doing things. But they did touch their mobile phone anyway. So we're trying to kind of go through all the processes that we have and to see, is it possible without kind of diluting the service level, delegating parts of that to an app.
So even a luxury brand like Kempinski is now looking at mobile check-in and all of that.
Oh, that's naughty. We have been looking at mobile check-in for a long time. We just didn't implement it yet to the large scale because we found that pre-COVID, even if we were offering it, most people wanted to have this luxury kind of welcome and service. But I'm seeing with the trials and what we're looking at the moment, it's too early to really say this is the new reality. But I see and I'm sensing a change of guest behavior across all sectors. And that's definitely pro things like mobile check-in, etc.
Let me ask one thing real quick, Flo. Wilko, while you're on that topic, and I think it's a very interesting topic that Flo just brought up, tell me, is the perception of luxury going to change? Because ultimately, what we all were taught back in the days when we were still young at university is luxury is connected to people. It's a people business. It's people driven. The top luxury hotels of the world have got, in some cases, 2 or 3 employees per guest. The first thing you want to have is a welcome, as somebody saying welcome to the hotel. Is all of that perception going to quite naturally, because of the hygiene measures that had to be put into place? Is that quite naturally going to change? Are people going to be more shall we say, accepting of luxury being also very closely linked with the digital world and with digital services that may replace 1 or 2 employees?
I think it's important to understand that, yes, it will change due to the new guest preferences. However, it will not mean that we have fewer people. So I think that it will definitely change in the way how we use things, how we touch things, how we clean things. But it will not mean that there is less people taking care of you in the background, or that it's not handcrafted. It's just maybe the way how we deliver it, how we order it, how we pay. I think one of the biggest impacts we see is payment. I mean, cash is dying out now these days,
Yeah.
which is something which the Chinese say like, what do you mean? It's been we don't use cash for a couple of years anymore if you're not super poor. But, and banks are saying, oh, finally no coins anymore. They have been a nightmare in terms of distribution, etc. So that is a big change of guest behavior. But just because we accept mobile payments does not mean that the level of luxury service is less or that we have less personnel and staff. The other thing is also, and this is the interesting thing with Kempinski wide services, I think these days are good for luxury players, because if you want to keep social distance, a 14 square meter shoebox Motel 1 style room is not the right place to isolate yourself if you compare that to a very nice deluxe room or executive room at one of our properties. Also, the hygiene measures means you have to spend more time in cleaning the room more carefully. This is also bad news for budget and good news for luxury. I don't think that the impact on the luxury sector is that big, because with all the things we used to do, we are adapting. So in the turn down service, we might not build a swan with your towel because there's too many hands touching the towel, but we use the same amount of time to completely disinfect all the touch points you have in the room. And this is a big chance for luxury hotels to kind of lift off. The other thing is also, if you think of just queuing for check-in, if you take a bulk check-in at a budget airport property, not quoting any brands right now, 2 meter distance has led to very funny pictures sometimes. So in our beautiful big palace style lobbies, it's absolutely no problem. And also we have more people checking in people. So the waiting times, the queues usually didn't happen that way like they used to do in other properties.
But
So
the guys with a mobile check-in already,
Pardon?
the guys with mobile check-in already, they don't have queues at all.
Well, they only got the queue where you actually come back down and say, I did the mobile check-in. The room is not opening to my.
It's a different kind of queue, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But they're simply. I mean, in luxury hotels, there is more space. Full stop. There is higher ceilings. There is better air conditioning. There is more cleaning. There is more hygiene. So yeah, here we go.
Wilko, I would love to dig a little bit deeper on the digital topic. As you know, we spent quite some time looking at all of that, and you've just mentioned that even such a big brand as Kempinski, that you guys have been implementing a lot of new technologies or digital systems in the past few weeks and months, and that especially customer behavior is changing. How do you see the development of the hotel technology stack maybe on an independent or on a hotel chain level? Do you think there's going to be even more little systems, and how's the role as being head of digital strategy evolving?
Thank you for that question. First of all, I think COVID is an accelerator for digitalization in hospitality. And the reason is we have no other choice in certain things than to get rid of paper. The second thing is I think there will be more tools coming up. And now it's a personal belief. I mean, if I look what happens in other sectors, I believe in platform technology with a lot of smaller applications. So something like you got your iPhone with your OS from Apple, but you got something like an app store where you can just choose amongst many small programs and you can customize the platform to your needs while still having the functionality and payment and security and privacy secured across the platform. So I think, although it looks different at the moment, if we look into who has the money, I think we're moving to more smaller players, better interconnectivity, more personalization. And I think also many of the systems will change from the hotel to the guest. So let me give you one very simple sample that everyone can relate to. When I started my career, we had 4 video channels. Without going into details what was on those video channels, but pay TV was a business line in the hotel. And we had direct dial telephones, so you could dial into the room directly without connecting through a front office or switchboard. That was super. Now these days, everyone is coming with a mobile phone. So direct dial telephones have mostly kind of been erased from room type descriptions. And nobody would even think about using paid TV too much, because you come with your Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, whatever account, and you just stream. The only thing you want is that you can kind of connect your device to the big screen in the room and that you can stream your content on it. So these kind of things, I think, and if you look at how much the investment was on pay TV systems, for instance, I think we see a lot of shift kind of going into a new direction. And it will be a lot of small players, but on one common platform or on a couple of big common platforms where they can interconnect. That's where I see the future.
Wilko, is the future going to make, or let me rephrase, is our current times making digitalization go faster? You said yes. Is the future going to become more and more digitalized in your opinion as well? Or if we look at the super modern things like which the hospitality industry considers super modern, I'm not sure they really are super modern anymore. Stuff like virtual reality and all the things that maybe are still a couple of years down the road for the hospitality industry. Is that going to come quicker as well, in your opinion?
Let me ask you a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
If you have the choice, you can either spend 200 or 2,000 hours on watching a live stream virtual reality from a beach with a cool wave and surfs and palm trees, or if you could spend a weekend hideaway at that beach, what would you prefer?
Wow. Okay. I think that's a super generation oriented question. I think I can't speak for Flo, but I think our generation would probably be one of the last ones to say, I would rather go.
I think your generation is buying more vinyl records than my generation.
That's a different problem. But yes, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But do you think that's going to stay that way, though? Do you think that the answer to your question is always going to be, I would rather go?
Well, I think the answer to the question will be, it will be both. There will be a mix. It will be hybrid. So there will be occasions where you just want the experience. And I think one of the things that might be a chance of coming out of this crisis is, I don't think it was healthy the way how we used to travel the past years. It was profitable, but it was not necessarily healthy for us as a society or for our planet. So all of these cheap mass travel, I think that market will be highly impacted, and I don't think it's bad. So I don't think it's bad if there are not thousands of people just flying in for a drinking weekend to the island of Mallorca. And I think it's good for the island of Mallorca because that will give more pleasure to the people who actually come there to spend a week to enjoy the island as it is, and not just to fill themselves up at the pool. So I think there will be a change of travel. Now, many people will not be able to afford long-haul travel a couple of times a year anymore. So they will carefully look into where to spend it. And there will be two things of it. Some of them will just go for as cheap as possible and will completely disregard quality. And these are definitely not our guests. And some others say, if I can only travel once a year or twice a year instead of 10 times or 4 times, I want to make the best of it, and I would fully focus on quality. And these are our guests. These are the kind of people that we are looking forward to welcome. So what do we do with all the free time in between? I think there will be digital solutions. I think there will be a lot of streaming. I think there will be a lot of VR and other things. But this very precious moment in time when you really decide to do a trip, to get the real experience, to stand on top of the mountain, to have your feet in the sand or something like that, that's the one where you say, okay, I'm going to spend all my budget on exactly that short period of time, but then I want the full quality. So I think there will be a mix of these two. And some, let's say, cheap heads will just put on a VR set and get drunk at home while they watch the Ballermann beach.
Wilko, it's been great. Just like that, 60 minutes have gone. So thank you beyond words for a very entertaining hour with you, including all the trade secrets from the Kempinski video calls, who's best and worst dressed. Let me ask you 3 questions, Wilko, that we always ask at the end of the podcast, and I'm very curious to hear your answer on one of them, because I feel like you might have a new answer there for us. Wilko, it's still the same question. Your favorite part about hospitality?
Again, my favorite part on?
Your favorite part about hospitality?
Oh, travel, meeting people, and experiencing new cultures.
The last trip you took was to where?
Well, if you call Geneva a trip these days,
let's say across borders.
Across borders, Germany. Well, it doesn't count. But the last real trip with an airplane was Istanbul.
And the most memorable thing about that trip?
The most memorable thing about that trip was jogging in the sunrise in front of our Shirgan Palace property directly at the Bosporus, and then doing the stretching in the gardens in front of that ancient palace, watching the ships passing by, sun going up, wind in my hair. Was just a perfect moment.
I mean, it sounds like a new doku soap on ITV4 or something. Tell me, and then the last question, Wilko, is the next big thing in hospitality will be, and I'm curious to hear what that is in your opinion.
The next big thing in hospitality will be...
We got him.
I think the next big thing in hospitality will be a hotel platform that kind of allows you to personalize your trip in a way that you've never seen before. So something like the iPhone I mentioned before, you get a basis standard, but then whatever is on top of that, you customize completely yourself, self-service, self-explanatory, interfunctional, all functioning. And I think that will be the end of, let's say, these cookie cutter tours and cruise ships, mass entertainment, everyone following the tour guide. You just got the app, you got your travel experience, and you follow your own path. By the way, if we would found a company on that, My Path, that would be a good name.
Wilko, thank you very much again for a very entertaining 60 minutes. All the best to you and Kempinski on the way back to where we're coming from, and thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, both of you, and I want to invite you already as soon as it's allowed that we meet in one of our properties for a drink, because as much as I enjoy the podcast, some things cannot be replicated completely over a conference call. And one of this is like sitting together on a rooftop terrace, enjoying a gin tonic.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Wilko. That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As always, don't forget to check out what there is to know about Smack at smack.media or on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook accounts. We'll see you next time.